Happy Tuesday.
Hey, Deb. How's it going?
Good.
Good.
You don't even stop me anymore. I just say it. You just let me say
It's a
it.
waste of my time. The people seem to like it. You do it no matter what I say or how I make fun of you. So I've given up. But you know what? That doesn't matter. We can save that for another episode when it's just you and I. We have an awesome guest tonight. We have speaker and host of the Humanity Unlocked podcast, Kimberly Daya. How's it going?
Good. How are you guys?
We are
Good.
doing well. Did I say your name right? I should have asked you before. Is it Daya?
It's actually Daya, but
Ah,
everybody says Daya, and I never correct them unless they ask. And I'm like, okay, Daya. I do it in the interest of my husband because it is his name. So try to
the one
correct
time I
him.
didn't ask. I should have asked, and I would have had the
No,
pronunciation
please
down.
don't. Everybody does it. You're fine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm I guess with the good company, I guess.
Yeah. No, you are. Yeah.
Well, hey, it's good to finally connect with you on the show. We've been, we start the podcast off by letting people know how we're connected to our guests, and with you, it was social media. It was pretty simple. I want to say you started your podcast not too long ago, and I want to say that I don't know if you followed us or if we followed you. Somehow it was on social media, on Instagram specifically, and then from there we just kind of connected and we started following what you do, and we're huge fans. It makes what we do seem very silly because the stuff you talk about is really some are really difficult topics that you're taking on. So we have a lot of respect for what you do. Ours is, we just did a episode last week about who we would pick for our top 5 like heist crew from previous guests. It's nothing serious on this podcast, but the stuff that you're doing is really impactful for your audience. So
Thank
we
you.
appreciate everything you're doing, but we thought, hey, maybe you would come over here and goof around with us for a little bit, and
I'd
we
love
can pick
it.
your brain about
Yes,
everything you're
love
doing.
it.
So that's pretty much it, Deb. We're connected through social media. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Love
I
it.
actually, how I found you guys was so September, I launched my podcast, like launched it on, fully launched on September 1st of 2023. And I looked up the hashtag Sacramento podcast, I think. And that's how I found you guys. And
Oh,
then I
perfect.
realized that you had a couple guests who I knew or who I knew of.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, look at that. And then anyway, and then I had the idea of eventually like having podcasters on, but that never really panned out. And that's where our initial conversation started, I think.
I do remember that. And that's funny. Sometimes I throw those hashtags out there and think, hopefully this works. I have no idea if it does. So good. They do work. They do
It
work.
worked in my case. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Kimberly, how did everything get started for you with the podcasting world? What got you excited about it? Like, how did you come up with the idea? Tell us a little bit about all of that.
Well, let's see. So I've been a stay-at-home mom my son is 22, and since he was five, in my daughter's whole life, because I started when I was pregnant with her. She's 16, and
You
I
do
got
not think you could have a 22-year-old. First of all, hang on,
yeah.
stop. You do not have a 22-year-old.
I had him when I was 23. I had him when I was 23. I'll be 46 in a couple months.
Okay, so
But,
just everybody who's not watching YouTube, she looks amazing. I would not think you had a 22-year-old. Okay, sorry.
I would
Continue.
have never guessed that either, to be
thank
honest.
you.
Yes.
Yeah, I had
Sorry.
him young. It was totally planned too. Couldn't have been more excited about that pregnancy. Everybody always thinks like, oh, she must have been like a heist. I'm like, no, we like had the whole thing planned. Got married, had a baby, whatever. So, anyways,
Yeah.
I became a stay-at-home mom not by choice. I was very much career-driven, very ambitious, but I got sick in 2007 with an autoimmune condition, and I kept trying to go back to work every time I'd hit remission, and I just kept relapsing like over and over and over again. And so we just decided like I just need to stay home. And I did like the short-term Social Security because it was during the recession too, and my husband's a real estate agent, so that was super fun. Like trying to like figure out how we were going to make ends meet and plus raise 2 kids. So I've always been busy raising kids and also healing because I've done so many different treatments and I've gone away for treatments and everything. And so I'm now at a place now. I've been at a place for the last couple of years. I'm in a pretty stable spot where I'm responding to treatment and I'm doing well. and I've never lost my drive to want to go back to work. And like I said before we started rolling, I am a huge lover of podcasts. Like it's insane, really. And I've been a huge lover since about 2015, and I consume them every day. Fully addicted to them, and it's my favorite form of media. And I've always thought to myself, I would love to do this job, like, but what? I don't know anything, like what would I ever talk about? So it's always been in the back of my head that I'd probably be good at this because I've studied it for so long without even knowing. And then what ended up happening is in 2020, 2021 timeframe, when everybody was just at each other's throats and nobody was like getting along, and like I was seeing it within my own circle and just the world around us, I got frustrated because I'm a kind of person who can typically see things from other people's perspective, even if I don't agree. I can kind of go, well, I can see how they would think that based on their own experiences. I may not agree, but I could pretty easily slide into that role. And I just thought if I could have a podcast where I could have people on and have conversations and allow people to see things from a different perspective by going back and having people tell their stories, maybe that might help bridge some of this gap. And so that's how it started. And there was also an element of, I felt like, and this is probably where that quality comes from with me when I was really sick, that I felt like nobody understood. And it comes from me hiding it. I hid it for a long time. Like I wouldn't take my wheelchair out in public. I was homebound, and I didn't want people to see me like that. So when people did see me, I looked totally put together when I was in remission. So people were, I feel like, maybe doubting me, like, is she really that sick? So it was the whole thing of feeling really misunderstood. And so I think that maybe is the reason why I have an easier time putting myself in others' shoes, even when I don't agree. So perhaps that's where that quality was born. But so that was the whole premise for wanting to start it. It has gone in a few different directions that don't necessarily follow that formula, but it's been fine because some of those episodes are best performing. So I just try to go with my gut, at this point. If I feel like it's a good story that either people will relate to or they'll learn something, then I'm pretty open to, I'll pretty much talk about anything at this point. So yeah, that's how it started. September 1st last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I like just even going through your topics, like on, I use Spotify to listen to podcasts and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some intense things in here. Even recently about, I think, losing a dog. I'm so sorry. And so I don't, and so that, I mean, anyway, geez, these are topics that I really love and that I like to listen to and sometimes talk about. And Josh and I were saying before we started recording, I think it was before we started recording, that, we're a little more like lighthearted and goofy and stuff, but sometimes we do like to hit on the heavier subjects here and there. And so it's just good to, I think there's more people out there who need to hear some of those things. So.
Well, and it's funny because I have had many conversations recently where I thought, I wish I could have a more lighthearted podcast. So it goes both ways. Like sometimes it gets really emotionally draining, doing it week in, week out, and you're dealing with so many people at a time. There's always like 3 people at a time I'm kind of working with in different stages of the process, and it can get draining. So there are times where I really wish I was in your guys' shoes.
But I'm telling you, people need to hear some of that stuff. There was several periods in my life where I was just like hardcore listening to like these life coach podcasts because I was like trying to work through something, and they were like heavy hitters, like type topics like anxiety and just, working through difficult times. And so even though I'm sure it's emotionally draining to talk about, but it's good for people to hear. Yeah. And so thank you for putting that content out there.
Yes, absolutely. You
just never know.
Yeah. No, it's true. Yeah. You really don't. You don't know what's going to resonate. Sometimes it's the ones that you'd least expect.
Yeah.
Well, that's the cool thing about the podcast space is, I've heard people say like, oh, why would I start a podcast? Everybody has a podcast, but no, there's a reason why there's so many podcasts out there is because you never know, as you mentioned, what someone needs in their life at that specific moment. And so there's really a space for everybody, right? Someone may just want to turn their brain off and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to listen to Connectable because I don't have to think when I listen to that podcast. Or someone might be going through a very specific type of trauma or situation in their life, and they can head over to Humanity Unlocked and they can find someone who can relate to them on that same level, not just someone who's talking about it, but someone who's actually gone through the same type of pain or trauma. And so
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I mean, that's good for you. And you know, I think something that people don't always realize is it's one thing to have the conversation and be the host of the podcast, but it's not just a matter of having the conversation. Like you have to, you know, there's a lot that goes into prepping that person because not everybody is real excited about having that conversation on air. You know, they're
Mm-hmm.
willing to do it, but we've come across it before where you have a heavier topic and they're like, I don't know. So it's not just having the conversation, but you're kind of coaching them through that process as well and being
Yes.
mindful of how they're feeling as you're having that conversation. So there's a lot that goes on, especially with the topics you cover.
Yes. It's an art form for sure. I feel like, and it's a dance between you and your guest.
Yeah,
And you have to know what kind of guest you have and how they need to be, for lack of a better term, like sort of handled or coached throughout the
sure.
process. Some are very hands-on with their topic, like they want their I always send them their outline in advance regardless if they ask for it, and some will read it with a fine-tooth comb and want to make edits, and some don't even look at it, and then it's just everybody's different depending on the issue, and also too everybody's different depending on if they've ever spoken about some of this stuff. Some of these issues
Mhm.
I've had, especially in season one, you know, there were people that never even told their stories to us, anybody. So that was really interesting. Lately, it's been people that are a little more seasoned at it, I guess, have
Sure.
talked about it at least a little bit.
And I can see that, especially the last couple of episodes. It seems like you've had people that are almost like experts in that specific field, which is great too.
Yeah, because the people like that, they reached out to me, which is makes my job so much easier. Um, so they're doing the circuit, the podcast circuit. They're going on different podcasts for exposure, and they're great at being a podcast guest. But for the longest time, I never had anybody like really like reach out to me. I would have people referred to me, like call my friend kind of thing. Like,
Sure,
so
sure.
be like that kind of, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, I don't know if I mean, you don't have to name any names, but have you, as you've done this for a while, have you gotten some maybe DMs from people that, you know, wanted to be a part of the podcast and just you're like, this is not, because we've gotten some where like, I don't think you listen to our podcast because we like to have fun, but probably not as much fun as you're you're implying in this in this DM. It's like, yeah, I
Oh
don't
my
think that would really
gosh.
fit with our flow here. So have you
Yes.
gotten a lot of that where people reach out looking to get some exposure, but it's like, nah, it's not going to fit.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's hard because what do you say? I've had, especially I would say like yeah. Well, what I get a lot of is people who will hear an episode about a specific topic and then they want to come on and tell their story about that same topic. That's what I started to get a lot
mm,
of that, like repeat, like people would want to come on and go, "Oh, I had that too," which everybody's story is unique, but especially for a newer podcast, I wanted to mix it up, especially in the beginning and not have too much in one direction.
sure,
Um, and then you'd have people who I don't know how any other way to say this, but there are just some people who just they like to hear themselves talk, like
sure,
and I think they just want to go on for the sake of going on, so it's not
sure.
really like based in any sort of like principle of trying to send a message. They just want to, I don't know. So that's hard too. So yeah.
You
And
are a
I'm
true
new.
pro. You're a
Yeah.
true pro. That was a very kind way of saying what we all know you're trying to say. So what good, well done.
Thank you. I do my best.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you what inspires you to like come up with some of the topics or, getting some of the guests on? Like I'm for sure, I haven't listened to it yet, but I'm for sure listening to your episode. What is it? Sorry, where'd it go? Dating and relationships from the male perspective. There's two episodes. Like right away, my brain, just because I'm in the dating world and my brain goes, boom, I wanna listen to that. So in terms of just how, and I'm asking these questions because some of our listeners, you know, might want a podcast one day or whatever. I don't know,
Yeah.
be inspired. But what how do you come up with some of these topics? Or is it that people reach out to you and then as you guys are talking, a topic comes up, or what inspires you?
A little bit of both. I think in the beginning, I had a really clear idea of the topics that I really wanted to cover. But in the beginning, and I advertised that, right? Like I had my website and I had my social media and I had my like list of examples and which were back then it was really, I always would say like I want to have conversations around things such as the chokehold of addiction, the battle of mental illness, domestic violence, eating disorders, like all these crazy traumatic topics. And so that was kind of my spiel in the beginning, but I didn't necessarily attract those guests right off the bat. And I was very trepidatious about approaching anybody who I knew had experience with that with any of those, because I felt like they were too sensitive of a topic to be like, hey, would you come on and talk to me about your eating disorder? Like, I just felt like that's so predatory. And so I put it out there, what I was hoping for, and just waited to see what would come. And what ended up coming to me was like a bunch of other topics, or like I said, for the dating and relationships, my girlfriend, Amy, who is one of my guests and she came on to talk about infertility. And she referred me David, who came on to talk about relationships from a male perspective, because Amy was saying you need to have some guys on. And I was like, I would love to have guys on. I don't, but who? Like, and so she said, you should do one on date. So anyway, that's how David came to me. And then it's weird. It's like I'll be working out, or like I was getting my hair done and my hairdresser. You guys actually might know, because I feel like we have a couple friends in common.
I think so.
Do you know City of Refuge, Rochelle?
So no, I don't know. I don't know them personally, but I feel like I have some
Okay.
friends that are well connected with them. I'd have
You
to
know
go
who I'm
back and look.
talking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So Rochelle Ditmore was a client of my hairdresser as well. And when I was getting ready to launch the podcast, she was saying, oh, you need to talk to my client, Rochelle. She founded City of Refuge, which is they're a nonprofit that helps people, the homeless, drug addicted, like all kinds of different homeless mainly.
Yeah.
Talk to her about, because everybody's frustrated with homelessness in California. And so let's hear how people become homeless. Like let's get the backstory on this. So I brought her on, and she was so graceful in her in the way that she talked about this subject, which is such a rough subject, and made myself and many people I know say, wow, like I still don't love the fact that there's so many homeless people. Like, that frustration still stands, but now I have a better idea of like how this all happens, and like there are people too in the whole thing. So a lot of times it will be somebody suggesting a topic to me, like my hairdresser suggesting that. So but they don't think like, oh, I'm in the mood for, let's just talk about something a little lighter that's more relatable. Like, homelessness isn't necessarily super relatable. So I had on actually they were podcasters from a podcast called In the Pink Room. We talked about motherhood. So I had them on. And I had on somebody just recently talking about like image and vanity, because like people that get judged for being too done, and people get judged for not doing enough. And it's like, so some of these topics are much lighter, but the underlying sort of thread is like the whole judgment thing, like, judging a situation or a person based off of whatever that topic is. I had on somebody, we talked about Ozempic just recently, the weight loss drugs, antidepressants. I will pretty much talk about anything, but some of those heavier hitting topics, I did have on a gal I work out with at the gym referred somebody, her sponsor in AA. And so I did have on a recovering alcoholic, and that was a phenomenal episode. One of my favorites from season 1. I get chills just thinking about it. I did have that one on, but as far as all of the others that I mentioned, that I had intended on like wanting to attract, you know, I don't know that people are really ready to talk about it's like a really heavy stuff. So we've gone in a million other directions, which is totally fine. I like to keep that thread of trying to dismantle judgment and see things from another perspective, even if you don't agree. But it's not always there. That thread, I mean, sometimes it's just not there. And then that's fine because the story still is one that, as long as we're either learning or we're relating and feeling like we're less alone, then who cares? So I've had to be flexible. And I've had to get used to just like not being so rigid with my topics.
Yeah, that's always a tough thing though, especially doing this because you have a direction, a vision for which way you want to go.
Yeah.
And then when it doesn't quite work out that way, there is that initial, like, you're trying to fight back a little bit, like, no, let's stay on course over here. And then whatever's happening, it kind of takes you in a different direction. And that's just kind of naturally the way it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
But I think it's awesome. Like, again, I keep saying it, but the topics that you're covering, and I mean, it's such a perfect name too for the podcast, Humanity Unlocked, because
Thank
it's
you.
kind of what you're doing, right? Like, you mentioned the judgment kind of being the through line for all of it, but I mean, really the humanity in everybody is a big part of that as well. And no matter what the story is, no matter what the trauma is, no matter what I mean, you even had the episode with your kids, right? Or was it just your daughter?
No, I had my son in season 2, Jordan. We did
Yes.
one. That one was on Two Homes, Two Families because he was my 23. He's my 22-year-old who I had at 23. I married my high school sweetheart.
Yeah.
Like an idiot. I'm sorry to anybody that's married their high school sweethearts and it's worked out, but I'm like, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
Got married really young, had him young, and we've shared custody, for the since he was 5,
Sure.
half week on, week off, and he is now as a grown man says that it is the best thing that's ever, for him, it was the best possible thing that could have happened for him in terms of being from a divorced home. I thought that it would scar him to be away from, us moms. It's like, he can't be away from me that long. But he said, if I had been with you 100% of the time, I would have never picked up on some of these qualities I had to learn, even though I got remarried and my husband as an amazing stepdad since age 3. They're so different even that anyway, long story short, I had him on basically I think for the moms out there who are going through it, because I know so many are, just knowing it's going to be okay. Like, and it wasn't the easiest divorce, but we're now we've been split for 21 years. So it's long gone, been fine. It's fine now. Like, it's been fine since he was probably 8, but that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that you can co-parent, that there are ways to do it, even if you're super different, like we were, in super different homes and like ideologies and just different ways of doing things. I was just trying to give that peace of mind from my, at the time, 20-year-olds, I think he was 20, no, maybe 21, from his perspective. And so I had him on to talk about that. And I had my daughter on to talk about, she's 16, what your teenager wants you to know.
That was the
And
one. That was when I listened
yeah.
to, and that was awesome. That was a really fun conversation and super insightful too, especially for, you would think like a 16-year-old, so many different things going on in her life, but the fact that she was like, yeah, I would love to sit down and talk with you about all these things was really cool.
Yeah, and she's introverted, so she was totally gay from the get-go. I said, if you want to do it, then I have a topic for you. And she goes, I'll do it. It's fine. And I was like, okay, all right. And she did. She was really good. And she's a big reader and writer though, so she's very verbal. Words
Sure.
are her, as they are mine, her friend. Like, she's very good with words, but she's definitely more of an observer than she's a talker. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to talk about what your teenager wants you to know, because I think we all have it in our minds that kids need to be raised this way or that way. Well, I tell you, from my 2, no 2 are the same. Like,
Sure.
The way I raise her is like nothing like how I raise. Nothing is working. Nothing has worked with her that worked with him. And it's been really the biggest test in parenting, and not in a bad way. Like, she's not a difficult child. It's just in terms of like communication, or like just how much attention she needs, how much she doesn't need. Like, it's just, they're very different. And so I wanted to be able to offer a voice to like what different like teenagers may need versus what we think they need and they actually don't need. So yeah.
I love
I think it's
that.
awesome.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
think, well, and so those topics are so relatable, right? To like just put yourself, like all of that, what you just like, I don't have kids, but right away, even for you to be like, I want moms to know that this is okay. Like to me, that's already relatable because I do have friends who are single moms.
Yeah.
And the teenager thing, I work with teenagers. So I'm like, oh, this is great. That's something that I would need to know too. So I think, topics like these, I think they come about for a reason. And yeah, I think those are great topics and that's great information for people to have. And it just, people want to feel not alone in a
Yeah.
certain situation.
I think being a parent is one of those things that no matter how prepared you think you are, something will always throw you off course. And you'll always ask yourself, even as good, and I feel like I'm a pretty dang good mom, at least my kids tell me I am. You'll always say, am I doing this right? Am I doing enough? It's just, I think we just naturally get like doubt ourselves. And so, until they're older and they can tell you like, if you hadn't done this, mom, I don't know where I would be, or I'm so glad you did that. But they'll also tell you things you did wrong too. Like my daughter, like now will be like, you should have been harder on me with this, mom. You should have made me finish that sport. And I'm like, oh, so they'll tell you that too. But thankfully, none of that has been life changing or life ruining stuff. But yeah, it's cool when they can give you feedback on your parenting.
For sure.
At that age.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of take it in a little bit of a different direction, but I'm just curious, like, I'm always fascinated when we have someone who does the podcasting thing on the show. I just have all these podcasting questions, but obviously you've been doing it for a little while. You have a ton of episodes, a ton of great content. Your set on YouTube looks incredible. Like just visually, it's really awesome.
Thank you.
But as we know, as much fun as this can be, it's also a really difficult thing as well. So as far as podcasting, like what would you say is your favorite part of this podcast journey so far? And then what is that one thing that you're like, if I could just get rid of this one part, like this would be a perfect thing to do. But unfortunately, it's just part of the game. So what's your most favorite part and your least favorite part?
I love that you asked me this question because I feel like I think about it a lot, and I feel like I actually probably talk about it a lot with my husband. My favorite part is when I'm doing the job.
Sure.
When I am sitting across from my guest and because we have long episodes, some of them have gone, only a couple of them have gone 2 hours, but most of them go over an hour.
It's easier than people. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. It's easier than people think.
What to sit down? Yeah.
Because I get the question like, how do you talk for 45 minutes to an hour? It's like, oh, when Deb and I are on here, it's pretty easy. And then we've pushed 2 hours a couple times, and like, how in the world? It's like, I think it's a lot easier than you think it is. I don't know if you feel that way, but that time really flies by.
Well, I think it just, I'm a little bit of I'm a listener by nature. So, and I'm a very curious person. So I tend to, even though I have an outline, I tend to go ask more questions I didn't anticipate on asking. I have to reel it back in, and it's a whole thing. So for me, it's about not going too long. It's never about filling the time because I never run out of questions. But so that's my favorite thing. I love when I'm locking in with my guest, and that's how it truly feels. I almost forget I'm recording, and I just lock in, and it's an energy that gives me energy. What I don't enjoy, the hardest part, oh gosh, it's changed a bit. Currently it's scheduling. I do not enjoy that whole hustle of and pitching and scheduling. That to me is, even though it's not like it's like hard, it's just like, okay, got to go fill in, and it's like going back and forth with the calendar. Like I like the way you did it because you were like, these are the time slots, pick one. I'm like, I really should do that.
Thank you. Not everybody appreciates that.
What?
Not everybody appreciates that. So
I do.
I'm glad you did.
I'm guilty of like being too flexible probably. And I do a pre-interview because our episodes tend to be a little heavier, and I hardly ever know the people. We do a pre-interview that's about an hour, and I get a good backstory to write the outline on. that way I can guide the conversation, because sometimes with these topics, they're so heavy that they could really go off in a million different directions. And I don't want that. I want to be able to focus
Sure.
in on what our objective is. So, so that whole scheduling aspect of reaching out, pitching, them going back, and they're talking about when you're meeting for the pre-interview, then you're talking about the studio recording, and all that to me is I wish I just had a scheduler to do that for me, and life would be much easier. I don't hate anymore. I used to hate editing, hated it because technology is like the bane of my existence. Technology and I just do not get along. And
Sure.
I'm sure it's me because I'm a dinosaur at it. And I've been I'm a 40, almost 6-year-old stay-at-home mom for 16 years. So I don't know anything. I'm better now, so I don't hate it anymore, but it's time consuming.
Yeah.
I think it's always when I'm doing the job. That's how I know I love the job, because I don't want to do all like the rest of it. Just put me in front of the person and let's do the thing that I'm actually here to do. Unfortunately, I'm like a one-man operation though, and for me it's a full-time gig. It is. There's not a day that I'm not doing it, because I'm always working on scheduling, I'm working on editing, and I'm working on preparing for my next recording, which is writing up my outline, which that
Sure.
usually takes several hours as well, because I'm basically looking at my notes from the pre-interview and putting them into an outline. So I'm always juggling those three guests. And so for me, it's full time. I don't know how people do it part-time. I probably make it a lot harder than it has. I always tell my husband, I guarantee I'm doing this the hardest and the longest way. I don't know what the quickest and the easiest way is, but it's not what I'm doing. I just know that I'm doing something wrong.
No.
But the product is fine. Like, I'm always happy at the end. I'm always like,
Yeah.
oh, look at how pretty. It all turned out so nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a grind to get there.
Yeah. No, well, that's the beauty of it now, is that there's so many different ways that you can do it. And I feel like there's no right or wrong way to do it now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I look at I hear some stories of people, how they edit. I'm like, oh, I don't take that much time at all. They're taking out every and ah and sneeze and cough. I'm like, oh, if you come on this podcast, you just know if you sneeze, it's going to stay in there. And so you got to prepare yourself for that. See, Deb knows.
People do that? People take out all the, oh my gosh, you know how long
There's
that would take me? I say every other word. And I hate myself for it. I really
do the same thing.
Like, gosh, stop doing that. But
yeah, people get pretty obsessive with it.
Ours is raw.
It's very raw. It's very raw.
Yeah, but you guys don't do the ums like I do. I've listened to your guys's. I am just horrible at it. I think because my brain works, it's like I know what I want to say, but I have to put the words together to say it in the way I want to say it. So because I know I'm on some level, I know I'm being recorded, and so I would like it to sound as polished as possible. So there I go. It's all the time. It's all the time. I wonder. See, this is where I wonder if there's a program that you could just feed it into and it removes all your ums. There probably is.
So, well, it's funny you say that, because we're recording on Riverside, and they do have a feature that does that. It's like an AI thing. I've done it. Didn't like how it turned out. So like I can't use that anymore. It was a little too weird.
The AI stuff can turn out. I use Opus AI.
Okay.
For my clips.
Sure.
No, I don't. Wait, well, it depends. I kind of get ideas for clips through Opus AI, and then I take them and then I polish them up in CapCut. But but sometimes when you have a program just do the whole editing thing for you, it's very choppy and it doesn't sound natural, which is what I have found.
Yeah. And I also, to be honest with you, I feel like the AI kind of favors Deb, because I feel like Deb turns out like she sounds better and all that, and it makes me sound very dumb. So I think the AI is against me personally. I could be wrong.
The AI is a woman. That's why.
It might be. It might be.
That's so funny. Wow.
Just kidding. No, we're definitely not perfect. We always say that we're very professional, meaning we're not professional. And so we just we don't ever edit our stuff. I think the only time we've ever edited something is if like someone comes back, when we're done recording and someone will be like, hey, I actually didn't mean to say this person's name, or can you please take out this little part? I realized I shouldn't have said that. I don't know how many times you've had to do that, Josh.
It's happened twice. Three. It's happened 3 times. It's happened 3 times. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Have you ever had anybody ask to listen to it back or watch it back?
No,
I've had that,
uh, no, we did that early on.
which is
We
fine. But
Yeah, we would do that. So we would send it to each other. Actually, I
mhm.
would send it to Deb and say, "Hey, what do you think?" And for a while, I was like, "Yeah, it sounds good." And then Deb's like, "You know what? To be honest with you, I haven't listened to the last like five." I'm like, "Perfect. Neither have I. So let's just roll with it."
But,
Yeah,
but yeah, Kimberly, you're saying your guests have asked you to
yeah,
send it to them before you post
Hmm,
it?
yes.
Wow.
that's
A
wild.
couple, not so much anymore, but definitely in the beginning,
Yeah.
um, pretty often. And then I started getting to the point where I was like, maybe I should just like, so that way I don't want to release it and then be upset. So I started to go, let me know if you want to listen to it ahead of time. And then I
Gotcha.
stopped offering, and then no one, and then people stopped asking.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with my editing, it's more like I listen to. So here's the thing, um, we I built a little. So I used to rent out a studio by the hour. I worked with like three different producers.
Sure.
I don't mean to air quote. One of them's just literally just the room and the microphone and the recording equipment, and I do it by
Yeah.
myself. That was my first one, audio only. And then the second two were with the producer there, and they do the whole thing, which
Hmm.
was very easy, um, very easy. Now I built the studio in my husband's office in his brokerage,
Wait, hold
his
on.
real
That's the stuff now is in your office.
Yeah, in his real estate
Whoa.
brokerage. There's a room that wasn't being used. So I just put up like those velvet curtains around, and then I used that desk and I put the mics and I was like, and put my sign and I was like, there we go, studio done. Um,
Wow.
so with that, but, you know, with that comes a lot of sometimes technical difficulties because I'm in charge of my own camera, my audio, all that stuff. And sometimes like I said, technology and me, like my cameras have shut off before, my audio has, I mean, things have gone wrong. And then some of my best episodes, things went wrong. And I'm like, damn, like I get so like irked. Thankfully, all of my guests have been cool.
Sure.
Like I had one guy on, I don't know if you guys saw it. It was Boomer Bennett. He
Yes.
was a gang member, a former gang member. We had more technical difficulties in that darn episode, and I was so locked in with him. It was such a heavy conversation, and stuff kept going wrong, and I'm like, ah. So that's the stuff that editing on the back end, like I've had to repair audio before because one of the mics went out and we didn't know it. It was just it's ridiculous. So now it's less of that. But when I say editing, it's usually editing like that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Now it's more like when I say editing, I've gotten to the point now where I'm making my own clips and they're video clips, and that takes a while. Those making those
Yeah.
YouTube shorts or those reels,
Right. Yeah.
those take actually longer than the episode itself.
I 100% agree. Yeah, I've been in my
Yeah.
office for quite a while, and my wife pops her head in. She's like, "Are you coming out here anytime
Yeah.
soon?" I said, "The computer's fighting back. I may not see you until tomorrow morning." So good night.
You guys do, yeah, because you guys do clips. Do you just
We do.
pull a segment and put it up, or do you edit sections together?
I
You guys just you see, you make it very easy on yourself. So
Yeah.
I just like to do things the hard way. I'm telling you. So I'll like figure out like, oh, this goes well with this, and I get too in the weeds with it.
No, we take
So I
a
don't have.
section. Yeah, we take a section. I try to find a section that's fairly clean, and then I try to get it down under a minute if I can. It
Mhm.
doesn't always work, and if the content's really good, I'll let it kind of go longer. But yeah, I try to find a section that works, and yeah, but that you're right. That part does take a lot of time because, and
Mhm.
part of the problem too, if it's just me and Deb, I'll put something out there and like Deb's not going to care. I don't care. If we sound a little silly, it's all good. It's kind of the point sometimes. But when we have a guest on, you do want to find the very best clip to represent them and what they're doing the best it possibly can. And so that's where it gets a little bit more time consuming because I'm like scrolling through. I'm like, that's a good one. That's a good one. And so you definitely feel more pressure and not just pressure, but like responsibility to your guests because they took your time, they took their time to be on the show. So you want to, promote them the best you can. Like I said, with
Yes.
Deb and I, we've put clips out. They're always fun, but it's not as much pressure because,
Yeah.
it's, we're here every week. So,
Yeah.
one
No,
bad clip, not a big deal.
I totally agree with you. I feel like I'm almost doing it on behalf of like, especially if it's something like an author or, and they don't put that pressure on me. It's all
Right.
self-induced.
Right.
Or just, I don't know, like I just feel like I want to give them something good to be able to put, I want them to want to share it.
Sure.
And here's the thing. Oh my gosh. Okay. So you know what? Another thing that I have a really tough time with, and I don't understand it. I don't understand it. And I probably need to say something. I don't understand when I have a guest and we take all the time to do the episode and it comes out beautifully and they're happy with it and everything and they don't share it. I am just like, and I've made the clips and I've tagged them in
Yeah.
it and all the things, and they don't need to like put it on their. I don't care if they put it on their like their profile,
Sure.
on their like, but like maybe in the stories or like maybe just share the episode. But it's
Sure.
almost like it's our little secret that I did this. And for some of the topics, I understand. Like with my recovering alcoholic guest, it's a terrible term, Michelle. For Michelle, we used only her first name because she's a school teacher. No, just principal. And just in the interest of keeping. So I understand we talk about these things up front. Like she wants to be anonymous, but she wants to help. Perfect.
Sure.
No problem. But there are some where it's like there's literally no reason not to share this. It's a good episode. We spent all this time, and so that's rough. I'm like, they don't like the clip. Did I do it? Like, did I edit something they didn't like? And so I don't know. Do your guests share all yours?
For the
Uh,
most
Mostly,
part.
yeah.
Yeah, for the
Those,
most part. But I will say we have had that before. And so I think it doesn't bother me anymore. It definitely used to,
Mm-hmm.
because it felt the same way. It's like I spent a lot of time in this office putting this clip together. Just click share. And so it used to bother me, but then I got to the point where I'm like, I'm going to take pressure off of everybody. So a lot of times I'll tell people, I'll say, hey, if you want me to tag you, I'll tag you. If you want to share it, perfect. If you want me to add you as a collaborator, no pressure, whatever you want to do it. That's at least helped me mentally not be
Yeah.
offended when they don't do it. Um, the,
Yeah.
and I'll say now, the only time that offends me is when someone asks me to do something specific, like, hey, make sure you tag me. I'll share it all over the place, or make sure, you add me as a collaborator. And then they don't do anything with it. It's like, well, this time you asked me to do this, and you didn't
But
really
that.
follow through. So that's the only time it's a little bit weird for me. But that's even with booking guests. We've had people where they say, yeah, send me dates, I'm really looking forward to this, and then we never hear back from them. And my thing, maybe it's just a pride thing, I'll only follow up maybe twice.
Mm-hmm.
Twice is very generous. Deb knows, I've ranted about this
Same.
before. And especially, if people have canceled on us or just didn't show up to an episode, like
Wow.
that's a huge bummer. And so then, you know, I get a little bit prideful there, and I don't necessarily follow up all the time.
I
So I'm
think
like, I can't keep doing this. This is silly.
that's not pride. That's self-respect. I mean, you got to respect yourself and what you like. You can't want it more than them. Like, I guess you can want it
Sure.
a little bit more than them, but they need to want it. It's like meet me halfway. If you can't
Yeah.
do
But
me
luckily
that.
that hasn't happened for a really long time. We've avoided that. In fact, I think the last time the worst one was when Deb and I were doing our previous podcast, and we were having a back and forth with this guy, and we finally got one scheduled, and he maybe an hour before, 2 hours before, I said, hey, just want to check to make sure we're still good. And he said, you know what? I forgot a date night with my wife and I can't do it. I'm like, oh, we're done. We're done here.
Yeah, no.
So you need to tell your wife that you messed up and you double booked. But he did not. So I'm like, oh, that's probably good. He's like, I'd love to reschedule. I was like, we're not rescheduling this. There's no way.
Have you ever done what? Have you ever recorded an episode and then had the? Well, you guys probably haven't because of the nature of your podcast. Is probably people don't get nervous as much. But I've had a guest where I recorded an episode and she asked me not to air it,
oh,
and I
Because of the
didn't
because of the
because
content, or because of how she felt
he
like
got
she
cold
did.
feet and what
Oh.
we talked about, and it wasn't anything. I mean, I can tell you what it was. It was about parental alienation,
Mm.
and um, it was a learning lesson for me because I thought, okay, I need to make sure I could tell. So she said that she wanted to do the episode. So in like a comment on social media said like, oh, I have some of these issues. I could come on as a guest. And so I just followed up with her and said, oh, I saw your comment. Do you want to, in the DMs, I DM'd her. And so we did the pre-interview. She approved the outline. We recorded. And then she said, when is this going to air? I told her, and she's like, okay, good. Then I'll have time to talk to my kids. Her kids are older. like mine. And then she just kept pushing it out. And if I now think back to the pre-interview, I could sense some nervousness in her talking about this so publicly. I should have known then not to do it, because I want someone to be proud to share their episode or excite. Like, I don't want anybody to have any reservations about it, because if you do, then let's just not do it. I don't
Sure.
I don't want you to feel bad about this. Like, I'd rather not do it, So that and I kind of took responsibility, because I'm like, you know what, I could have done a better job at like vetting that situation. So learning
Sure.
lesson for me. And I told her, no problem. I understand, because I could see if I was in her shoes, I may feel weird about that too, like worried that what my kids would think. So,
Sure.
but it's only happened once, thank God. But since then, I worry. I'm like, please don't, because you pay for
Yeah.
us all the time, and
Yeah. No, that would be tough for sure. So yeah, you're right. We haven't dealt with that specifically because of the nature of our show. I think kind of in a similar vein though, it might be different for you because the topics are a lot heavier. And so I imagine that people are a little bit more careful with what they say. One of the things we have noticed on this podcast, and it's only burnt us a couple of times, is that because it is a very conversational show, we're a lot of times just silly, we're having fun, joking around. People do start, like Deb and I have talked about this. People start getting pretty comfortable pretty quickly, and then that's when there's some problems where they're like, I shouldn't have said that. It's like, yeah, probably not. I'll take that out. Like, which is great. Like, I feel like it's a compliment for us. Like, oh, they felt really comfortable with us right off the bat. But then they get a little too free sometimes and say some things that they may
oh
have
man,
regretted. So only a few times, but
yeah,
that's kind of the thing we've ran into. It's like they enjoy our company too much and feel like
yeah,
they
it's a
forget we're
compliment.
on air, that we're going to air
Yeah,
this. So
yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I could see how that would happen. I mean, it's actually happened. I always just tell them, just keep in mind, just talk. You could talk as freely as you're comfortable, but and if there's anything that you want me to edit out, like, in other words, like, if there's a question that you've approved on the front end that's in the outline, and then when you answer it in a way where you feel like you divulge too much, you, we can always go back and edit it. So I don't want you to panic in the moment. It's fine. So we've had that happen
yeah,
before, for sure. Yeah, people get. I mean, if you're a comfortable person for people to talk to, not everybody is a good listener. So people sometimes. I mean, I've been told this before, that people. It's nice for people to have someone who listens. So if you think about your guests in that way, like, not everybody wants to sit and listen to somebody talk.
yeah, we
Sometimes they need it. It's like a nice little outlet for them to, and then they get too comfortable. So
yeah, no, 100%. I laugh because I think you'll appreciate this, and then also be horrified because you are a podcaster. But I'm not going to say the name of this podcast, but we did a podcast, Deb and I, after someone did our podcast, and towards the end of the interview, this guy asked Deb a question, and she answered it, gave a really nice answer, and he's like, oh, great, great, great. And then he proceeded to ask the exact same question again right after she answered it the first time. I'm like, that was the same question. And so she's like, yeah, okay. And so then she answered it again really well. And as soon as we got off that call, Deb texted me, she's like, he asked me the same question twice in a row, right? I said 100%. I said, you gave two great answers. Nice
I was like,
job.
am I crazy? Was that just me? Because sometimes I'm a space cadet. I get it. Like, sometimes, like, I can talk, and I can talk to a brick wall, and I can talk to anyone. But sometimes I'm like, did I hear that right?
yeah,
So speaking of being a bad listener,
yeah.
What?
I
No,
said,
yeah.
speaking of being a bad listener, that was a rough example of that.
You have to. I have really early on realized that the minute I hit record, I need to treat this like, yes, I know, like I said, on some level, obviously, I know I'm recording a podcast and I understand that and everything. But my priority is to the conversation, because if my priority is to the conversation, the podcast will take care of itself.
Sure.
If I'm only thinking about my next question, or if I'm only thinking about what I need to do after this, or if I'm only, then I'm not, it's not it's going to show. And I think in this person's case, he was obviously so distracted with whatever else that he wasn't locked in. He wasn't actually paying attention. I mean, I should stop talking, but you know what I mean? Like, I just think that if you're listening to them answer that question, you wouldn't ask it twice. It's just, I think that some people are, I listen to a lot of podcasts where I love the guests that they have on. This
Sure.
is like people that I don't even know, but the hosts are not great. Like the
Hmm.
guests are good. I like the guests, I like the topics, but the hosts are just, some people are just not. It's just it's an art. It's like a little craft. You're either good at it or you're not. Some people are just, I will say though, like I'm not, one of the things that I'm terrible at as a host, and I want to get better at this is, I am, I feel like the need to be a little over prepared and be too thorough, that I write up an intro and I read it. I read the intro because I want to be able to, from the jump, give, like, I want them to, my listeners to know what they're going to get.
Sure.
I don't think I need to do that. I do it for whatever reason for myself to like set the stage. I don't know why, but whenever I watch my episodes back, I'm like, oh God, like what are you doing? Like knock it off. Like relax, like I kind of like want to tell myself that. Because if I was watching a host do that, I would be like calm down, like just be there
Sure.
with your guests. So that's something I think that I need to figure out, how to just relax in the conversation or put that intro just in writing in
Sure.
the description. But yeah, that's my one I feel like big for myself as a host, my one pet peeve I have for myself. Because what I'll do too is I'll see other people doing something similar where they're reading their scripted out episode, and I'm like, oh, that looks terrible, and I'm like, oh, I do that. Like I'm literally criticizing that person for something I do. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a
You
good
know,
teacher.
this just when you said pet peeve, this just jogged my memory because I forgot exactly what episode we did this, Deb, but something we were talking about, it was probably one of our list episodes. I posted a clip of me talking about how when I travel, when I get home from a place, I like to unpack everything. And Kimberly commented on that and said she was
Yes,
the exact opposite.
yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so the opposite of that. I remember that.
That just hit
I
me.
don't
I'm like,
know.
yeah, yeah. We had a couple of interactions like that. Yeah, it drives me nuts. I have to unpack everything, otherwise I don't feel like I'm home. I'm at home, and you're like, you said the exact opposite, where you
No,
let it sit so you can just relax.
7 to 10 days.
Man, I'm
I
like
love
seven to
Seriously,
10 seconds for
like
me.
I know people like you.
Sure,
And I always ask them like what, like, and they say that like they can't feel completely relaxed and like their like vacation's over or whatever's over until they have everything back where it belongs. And believe me when I tell you, like I keep a clean home, and like it's not that, it's not like I just don't care and I'm like very, it's
sure,
just that I'm not in a hurry to give myself more work to do. I just
sure.
kind of want to linger in the being home and not have to jump. But I know people who literally can't relax. Like I have, I could two friends off the top of my head that I can think of that literally can't relax. So it's a
Yeah.
thing. It's a thing for. I'm probably the minority because most people will do their laundry right away, and I'm like, "Are you kidding?" I'm like,
No, it's probably split. Like it was I'm glad you commented on that, and it's like, okay, it was nice to hear a different perspective because everything you said made sense. It didn't make sense for me, but it makes sense for people in general. Like I get that. I can see why that would be appealing. I think
no,
if
I
I
mean,
tried to do it, I'd probably lose my mind, but
I
I
wish I was
understand
more
why.
like you. I wish I was more like that because I feel like I've gotten way too comfortable with procrastinating on on some things. Then it's like, why didn't I just do it? What did I forget? What did Deb say in that video? Did she say she is like you or not?
I forget most of what Deb says, so I can't remember. No, I'm just kidding.
So no. So I will not unpack. I just will take out like my toiletries and like my
Right.
shampoo and conditioner, like my bathroom stuff. But I'm happy to leave my suitcase with all the clothes in there for a little bit.
That's what I do. I take out all my toiletries only, and then I leave the rest, and I deal with it when I feel like it.
Oh yeah, no, I do it right away. Like after the kids are good and I'm starting to unpack. And then my wife's like, "Are you done unpacking?" I said, "Oh, I've been done for about 10 minutes." And
That's
she's like, "Of
so
course you
funny.
are. Of course you are."
That's, it's a great quality, especially for a man to have, because I think that's pretty rare. I don't know any men that are that. I know women who are, you know,
Sure.
my husband and I are both like me, so it's not great. Like we're both like this.
Hey, but you guys get to enjoy that time together, though. It's like, hey, let the bag sit there,
We're, I
enjoy,
always say,
relax.
we did that. We did an episode on marriage,
Yeah.
and I always say we are way too complacent. We are just way too comfortable with just being comfortable. We do not need. We need to get like light a fire under us. Like, what's wrong with us? We're just too like comfy with like complacency and like, oh, we should, like, it's almost like something will be right in front. Like, this hasn't happened, but like a plant dying in front of us, and be like, we should water that. Yeah, we should water that. Anyways, so what do you want for dinner? And it's like we're just, that's us. It's so weird. I'm like, what the heck is wrong with us? We
Hey,
just
hey, if it works,
neither
it
one of us
works.
has sense of urgency. No sense of urgency in this house with the
That's
kids,
okay.
but everything else waits forever.
Hey, well, it seems to work for you guys, so good for you. Good for you.
21 years here we are, so it's,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
That's awesome.
So we want to. Oh, sorry, Deb. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just like 21 years. That's awesome. I'm just like, I can't even keep a date for 21 days. This is
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, it's, we met August 20. Our anniversary's coming up, August 22nd of 2003. No, yeah, 2003 because it's 21.
Nice.
Yeah, I just got lucky. I'll tell you. There's no like skill to this. You find them or you don't. Like, I really just got lucky. I feel like people always ask like, what's the secret? Da 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 da. I really couldn't tell you. We work. It's just, it makes sense that it's not. I said in the episode we did on marriage. Marriage is hard, but it's not that hard. Like, it's hard because you have to take into account like another person's feelings and perspectives on things, and with raising kids and like careers, home, whatever, illness in my situation. But I feel like if you're with the right person, you're kind of in alignment. You kind of sort of go the same direction on things. And when we don't, we're both pretty reasonable, where we're just chill. Like, again, we're just chill about it. We're just like, okay, well, tell me why you think that. Okay, this is why I think that. Okay, what do you think about this? And and then it's like done. And I just think we just met. We're alike that way, and we just got lucky. And I always say, I wish I could give better advice on this, because I think people struggle with how to not struggle. They struggle with how to not struggle in their relationships. And yeah,
That's good.
Yeah,
That's really good.
we should like teach a class or something. But I don't even know what we would say.
yeah.
That sounds like another podcast idea, maybe.
Yeah, maybe we should like a Q&A. That would be. How long have you been married?
I've been married. It was just 8 years. Oops, 8 years in June.
Oh.
This past June.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you have how many kids?
2.
Okay.
2, yeah, 5 and 3. So young ones.
Boys or girls? Or
2 girls.
2 girls.
Yeah.
Oh, are you guys? Do you think you're done, or do you think you'll have more?
No, I think it's probably done at this point. Yeah, it's probably done at this point.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it seems like two's been a good number for us. So it's a fun family unit right now. So you never know, but I would say at this point it's probably a wrap.
Yeah, they always say the world is made for families of 4, like everywhere you go. So it is easy. If you have families of 5 are a little harder. You think about like amusement parks, or it's just a little bit more difficult.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, we went to Disneyland not too long ago, and it makes it a lot easier having 4, for sure.
Yeah. We always wanted to have a third, because Mark and I we have Jasmine together, but he's been in Jordan's life since Jordan was a year old, because I met him like really soon after my divorce, or my separation. Like, he just came out of nowhere and just wouldn't go. I tried to like tell him like it's really bad timing, but he just stuck around until I was, I guess, ready to date. And where I was like, oh yeah. So a year after we got married in 2000, we got married in 2006. We had Jasmine. We got pregnant with Jasmine in 2007. She was born in 2008. We always thought we'd have one more, and then I got sick and we never did. So I've always like been sad about the fact that we didn't have that third, because we always thought we'll have 2 together. Because if you think about it, we only have Jordan 50% of the time. So it's like she's like an only child, or she grew up almost like an only child 50% of the time. So, but we never did have that last one. But in the end, it is something that I have enjoyed having. For us personally, for now, I've enjoyed having like a small, close-knit family.
Yeah.
But I think about when I get old, and I think about how it would be nice to have a lot of kids and grandkids, and so I overthink about those things. So, but anyway,
Hey, well,
good for
that's why
you.
your podcast is doing well, because you have that ability to overthink. So you're always thinking about the next thing and thinking forward. So that's not
Yeah,
a bad trait for sure.
yeah.
Um, we want to. I feel like we could be doing this forever, but we want to make sure we're respectful of your time. Deb, did you have any other final questions or thoughts for Kimberly before she gets out of here?
Well, no, just keep doing what you're doing. And I know it's so easy to, we could talk for hours. Josh and I have always joked about doing a Joe Rogan style podcast and just
Oh,
like,
it's the best.
let's just talk for 3, 4 hours. We probably could for sure.
Yeah,
But
I'm gonna do
Easy.
one of those.
yeah.
It- It's funny because my son told me, because my son's a huge Joe Rogan fan and has
Yeah.
been since he was in high school. He's 22 now, and I'm a fan too. I was listening to Joe Rogan way before Jordan was, because he was like, "Mom, you gotta listen to this podcast," and I'm like, "You listen to him." Like, I anything that you find, sweetheart, I've already listened to. But anyways, he when I first launched it, he was like, "Why do you have to keep it around an hour? Why can't like just settle into it? Like let the conversation go where it goes." He's like Joe Rogan does, and I go, "Ugh, the problem is I'm not Joe Rogan, and like not everyone wants to listen to me like hammer on and on and on. Like there's a
Sure.
reason why it's they're tuning in because it's him. They don't just do that for anybody. Someday maybe I've seen more people though doing that, like doing the long form.
Yeah.
So maybe podcasts are going that direction. Maybe attention spans are getting better. I
Yeah.
know right now attention spans aren't the best, which is why everybody's aiming for shorter.
Yeah.
I just can't. I can't bring myself to do it shorter. It's just too hard for me to condense it. But yeah,
It's
an hour
yeah.
seems
It's
to be good.
100%. No, it's way too hard. I think it depends. I mean, but that's where it's funny, right? Like when we talked earlier, for some people they hear that we do an hour or so podcast, they're like, how in the world are you doing an hour of talking every single week? And then I know some people that have done like 15 minutes, 10-minute podcasts. I'm like, I don't know how you do that. That's
No,
a
I'm just getting
skill.
started.
Exactly. Like that's like the intro. What are we talking about? So I'm like, good for you though. So it's funny once you find kind of your perfect space, you just kind of got to run with it. But yeah, for us, same thing. It's an hour is kind of the norm
And
for
when you're
sure.
in person, it's you guys might have found this when you guys record in person because I know you guys used to and have recently. I think like some Christmas episodes. Didn't you guys do some Christmas episodes in person?
Yeah.
Yeah, lately we've been doing Halloween and Christmas in person. It's
Yeah,
always fun. Yeah,
those are when you're in person. For some reason, you're less aware of the time, and it just you kind of really settle into it, which I think is another thing with Joe Rogan. They're comfortable. They're having drinks. They're doing whatever. And they just settle in, and it's like you become unaware of how much time has gone by. And I have been guilty of that with mine. So, but yeah, I mean, maybe someday I'll get to evolve into that because I always have to cut myself off. So,
yeah, we do the same thing. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. We used to love because we started off in person and the conversations are so much better. There's no awkward pauses with the technology and the freezing and all that stuff.
yeah,
But it was funny once the pandemic hit, we jumped into the online thing, and then just different life stuff for me, family, all that stuff changed. It's like it's tough to leave the computer sometimes because it's so convenient and
yeah,
it's easy in a lot of ways. So yeah, but I 100% agree. I definitely miss recording regularly in person. It's the
yeah.
best for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would. I just don't think I'd be a very good host. On maybe I would. Well, I should probably try it, but it scares me because it's on a computer, and we all know how I feel about technology. So I just like, I worry too much about that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah. Also, too, like, do you guys know? Have you asked your guests, or have they told you what length podcasts they prefer,
Oh no. No, we just
or do
ask
your
them and then
analytics tell
tell
you?
them to buckle up.
Yeah, like I don't always my guests and I don't think we're always on the same page because I think my guests would really rather them be shorter, and I'm like, try to condense this episode. Like, what would you have taken out? There's not a
Right.
lot of wiggle room at the end of the day with some of these subjects, but
Yeah.
I think people want it quick, and I'm like, not me. Longer the better. I like to like really have them in. I'm like doing dishes, cooking, cleaning, like laundry or whatever, just driving. I want something to
Yeah.
help me pass the time. I'm not looking for 5, 10, 20 minutes. Anyway,
Well, that's what Deb's brought up multiple times. She's like, "Hey, I listen to podcasts, that are what 1-2 hours." She's like, "There's a pause button for a reason. Deb, you
Thank
drive to
you.
school, you listen, you leave
Yeah.
school, you listen again. Like there's a reason why that's there.
Thank
It holds your
you.
place. It's a
Yes.
bookmark.
It's a bookmark.
Okay.
It's absolutely what it is. And I had people
Yeah.
in the beginning. That's why I have part ones and part twos and from earlier episodes, because people were like, it's too much to put in one part. And I'm like, so hit the pause button. And then everybody outvoted me that I asked. And they were just like, no, do it in two parts, do it in two parts. And after like 2 seasons of that, I'm like, no, we're not doing it. That's just too much. It's too hard, too much work. It's ridiculous.
It's a
I don't
pain.
understand why anybody would do two parts. Yeah.
No, I'm with
It doesn't
you.
make any sense. Like, I can't think of one good reason to do it. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with our podcast. Like there's no mystery. You could wait for part 2, but it's nothing exciting. It's not like, oh, I can't wait for part 2. You kind of know what you're getting in part 2.
yeah. I feel like it's the same with us too. Yeah.
I think the part like a part 2 or 3 or whatever, I think that it's more so for the podcaster, like just need a break from recording. Like, let's say you're telling a story or whatever. I think that would be helpful. But otherwise, if you're just going to straight record, just throw it out there because there's a pause button.
Right? I mean, that's what I do. I pause mine. I mean, sometimes it takes me a whole day to listen to an episode, and sometimes 2 days, depending on how busy I am. But I always finish them at some point.
See?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a perfect place to end. So if you guys are out there complaining about long episodes, suck it up. Just press the pause button and get, just deal with it.
Please. Yes.
Please. So Kimberly, where can they follow you on social media, all the different platforms, YouTube, all those different things? Where can they find you?
Okay, so on social media, on Instagram, it's Humanity Unlocked Podcast. On YouTube, where our episodes are on YouTube, Humanity Unlocked Podcast. TikTok, I think it's Humanity Unlocked Podcast. I'm not a big TikToker, but I do post my clips there. And then
same boat. I hate it.
You do TikTok?
I hate it so much, but I do it. I
do it just in case, and I've gotten some subscribers from there. So, and then my personal page, if anybody cares, is crap. What is it? Is it Lady Kim Daya? I think.
That's how you know you're a true podcaster. You know the podcast page, not even your own.
Sorry, jeez, no, I'm never on that. Well, I'm trying to be better. It's My Sick Fit Life, because I used to be into fitness, so and was sick. So My Sick Fit Life is personal, and everything else is Humanity Unlocked Podcast.
There you go. Make sure you guys go follow, go subscribe. It's that time of the day, and I just ran out of water too, so it's gonna be a dicey ending.
Time to stop.
Subscribe to her podcast. Go to YouTube, follow her there as well. Do all that stuff. She's got a ton of episodes, and I have no doubt. I feel 100% confident in saying this. If it's not an issue you're dealing with, I guarantee someone that is dealing with some issues that she's covered over the course of podcasting. So it can benefit you or anybody in your life. So make sure you check it out, share it with a friend, do all that stuff, because it will really, it would be beneficial for sure. Please go do that.
I should mention really quick too. I always forget. I also am on, as you said, Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. Same thing, Humanity Unlocked Podcast. I always forget about the audio, but I am over. If you're an audio listener, I'm over there too.
Perfect. Make sure you listen to anywhere and just do both. Subscribe on audio and subscribe on YouTube. You get the best of both worlds. Just go do that. So, Kimberly, it's been a ton of fun. Thank you so much. It was nice to finally have a conversation with you. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for having me. When we get up and going again, you guys will have to come on and be guests over at mine. We'll come up with a good topic that we can talk about.
All right. And we'll try not to bring your quality down too much with our nonsense.
No, it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Perfect. Hey, we're definitely down to do it for sure.
All right.
We would love to do that. So
I'll be in touch for sure.
Perfect. Sounds good. Well, until next week, you guys take care, and we will see you next time. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for watching the show. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure you like it, share it, and hit the subscribe button to get a new episode every week. We'll see you next time on the Connectable Podcast.